Welcome back and happy Monday to everybody here, and thank you for joining us once again in our webinars. The series just keeps, continuing to get better and better as we gain perspectives, from people that have walked, the path and have blazed a trail towards, where a lot of the players that we work with are trying to get to, and just the greater, soccer community. We have the pleasure of being joined here today from a footballing icon for sure, and solid class contributor to the Canadian landscape over his time. A person that I have followed in his career, from club career up to the point of now transitioning, to a coaching career, and definitely looking forward to having his words and his perspective towards his career in the past, and some reflections, and also catching up on his thoughts in the future. As we all agree and always discuss that it's absolutely critical and important for these guys that have now circled back and have finished their career, that take us into the next step. They have to be our leaders without question towards these next steps in Canadian soccer. So Patrice Bernier definitely doesn't need an introduction in Canadian soccer circles. Top class player, top class human being in his province, and an icon for all the right reasons. Patrice, I'd like to welcome you to our conversation with AIFC. We were just catching up offline, and I could just tell it's going to be fantastic. And thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to chat with some of my friends and people from the soccer world from outside of Quebec also, because the landscape is big in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting right into it, Patrice, we want to get a little bit of perspective on your career and just take you to different moments, and just going right back to maybe just right before it all began. You came up in Quebec as a multi-sport athlete. Definitely doing my research, you played hockey also at a very, very high level, with opportunities to pursue that channel very easily just by the level that you were playing at. Looking back at those years, what was maybe one point where you distinctly remember having to make the decision, to now, enter football full time, and also, what were some of the key components coming up that you think really helped you persevere from a personal level, to make it to the level that you made it in sport?
In terms of making the choice for soccer or hockey, it was quite easy actually. In terms, I've always been more soccer. Look, to go back real quick, my father, Haitian background. Haitian people tend to have big love for Brazil. So I grew up with learning stories from Brazil, and my father grew up when Pelé played, and the great Pelé and the great Brazilian 1970 team. So that has always been in my mind. I grew up with stories of the World Cup, and the first World Cup that I watched was on CBC, Radio Canada here in Quebec, was 1986. It was not too far in Mexico, and we saw Maradona. I saw the Brazil jersey. And Canada, that was the only World Cup so far as Canada has participated. So as a young Canadian, I was like, man, looking Brazil, I was like, how can I go? Because I can't play for Brazil. And I said, Canada's there. So most likely my dream is one day, can I reach that level? Can I be on TV playing, representing Canada? So I started with that. He put it in my mind. So I grew up. I started in soccer first. So I grew up with that desire, that dream of, can I play for my country and can I play on the big stage? And then they put me in hockey because I was a hyperactive kid. So Canada, to cover all, summertime, wintertime, hockey is the #1 sport in the country. So my father put me in there, and those were the glory days of the Montreal Canadiens in the 70s. So I got to grow up with the stories of the Canadiens and the legendary players. And I started playing both sports till the age of 18. But literally, to be honest, by 14, 15, I wanted to I think I really started dreaming of becoming a pro player. And then I entered the national team program on the under-17 team. And once I went to the World Cup, that really opened my eyes, saying, look, these kids I'm playing against, the only difference is they're in soccer-specific countries. They play soccer on a everyday basis, 10 months out of the year. Brazilians, Germans, when you look at the list, they're in professional clubs. I'm playing in a local Montreal club that nobody knows outside of Quebec or Canada. But I was doing well in hockey, and being in Canada, you can't say no. So I had to follow through and see how far I could go. So I went to the QGMHL, which is the equivalent of the OHL in Ontario. By that time, I wanted to go to soccer, but everybody's like, you never know. NHL is the next step. And I was playing with players. One great player that I played with, Roberto Luongo, who just retired. He was being touted as one of the highest draft picks at that time, and we're the same age. So I said, you never know. I could maybe get picked. So I pursued hockey until 18. But my second year, when I realized that I met a scout who told me that I was a good player, but I was a defenseman. And I was 5'10" and 175 pounds. And he told me, gaining weight, you could go to the gym and all that stuff. They said growing, and the hockey period that I play with is the 90s. And so if you're not 6'1", 6'2", you had to have amazing stats to start getting looked at. So already in my mind, it was like, I'm going to soccer, but you never know. Maybe that hockey door could open. And at 18, once I realized that I couldn't go, that I wasn't going, then I jumped on soccer full time. I already had a scholarship waiting for me before I actually went to the junior ranks. So I just called the coach and said, okay, I'm ready to come and play soccer. And I started concentrating on soccer from the age of 18 fully. I went to Syracuse, and then now it was specifically just playing soccer. And then I kept going to national teams. And then I met, at the time, Ozek Oger, who was the men's national team coach. And he's the one who kind of told me, you're good, but you're behind because you don't play soccer on a year basis. You need to be in a professional structure. And by the age of 20, I said, okay, I think the time is now to go pro and to see how far I can go. And I'm still young. I think knowing the Canadian system of school, I said, if I don't make it in the next few years, I could always come back. And my career started by the age of 20 with the Montreal Impact, and then it lasted for 18 seasons, and I got to play for Canada. But making the choice already deep down, I was a soccer guy. I just loved the sport. Even though I played hockey, it was surrounding me. Everything about soccer it was a calling. My best friends were soccer players. Going to the park was playing soccer. Playing hockey, I was like, yeah, okay, good. I played it on a regular basis, but soccer was everything I thought about, dreamed about. And I grew up watching Soccer Saturday. So Graham Leggett was like every Saturday I put my VHS tape. And even when I was hockey, I used to live away from home. And the parents where I used to live with, they were always like, why do you even play hockey? Because you're always watching soccer on TV. I would just watch the tapes and tapes and tapes every day, because this was the only way at the time to keep soccer fresh in my mind, because we didn't have streaming internet games playing every day or watching every league everywhere and all the access that we have to the soccer now. So soccer wasn't that hard to leave hockey. When the choice was made long time ago, was just waiting for that moment that tells me, okay, hockey, you're not going to go as far. At least it might take more time to go further. While soccer was doing well, I was doing well, and I was already on the national program also.
Nice. So take us back to the national team when you first representing Canada on the big stage in '95. I believe it was in Mexico, Ecuador.
Yes.
You guys were in the group of death. You played against Germany, Brazil, and Oman. You scored the only goal in the tournament for Canada. What other memories come to mind when you think of that tournament and representing Canada?
Oh, that tournament goes back to actually the qualifiers too. It's in El Salvador, and I was bumped into the team because the dates were changed. So it was, you were born from August to August. Those were the years. It wasn't January to December 31st. So I was a 79 with a group of 78s. And I think Brad Parker was from Ontario, who was in 1980. We were the two youngest ones. And so I was brought into that group that was already being, that I already started training together a year before I got there. I got into the team. So the qualifiers was my first time playing international soccer. Not in the US, not in Canada. Even though I went to a tournament in France, it was actually playing against the best of the best in CONCACAF. And so we played Mexico, played the States, played Costa Rica, Jamaica, and being in El Salvador, the environment. We were in stadiums that were 5, 6, 10,000 people. So compared to playing in front of a few hundred parents at home, that was the first eye-opener. And then we went to the World Cup. And the World Cup, no matter if you're not in the men's team, it's still the World Cup. And like you said it, in our group, we have Brazil, we have Germany, and then Oman. And as I mentioned before, my parents big fans of Brazil, so I became a big fan of Brazil. And they had just won the World Cup in 1994. So just playing them, it's like you're playing the team, the country that, let's say, represents, okay, now we can talk about different countries, but when you talk Brazil, you say World Cups. They have 5. So going to that tournament was going there. And then in Ecuador, then there's a different reality where you're in confinement, you're in hotels, you have armed bodyguards, because in Ecuador at the time, it wasn't necessarily, it was a great tournament, but it was to protect the countries. Everybody come from different areas. So all that was extraordinary. And then also just life lessons in terms of my parents came, we went outside walking, learning the locals, the cultural background. And we met this lady that knitted bags. And we bought 3 or 4, and the lady was crying. And we asked the translator why, and he says, because she usually sells 1 in a month or 2 months, and now you bought 3 or 4, and for that lady, this was a highlight. And so when you realize when you're Canadian, the privilege that you have in terms of the country that we live in and all that we have, and then you go in Ecuador and you buy 3, 4 bags knitted for a lady, and then you see the difference that you can make. And I'm 15 years old at the time, and I'm like, why? It's like, because they're accustomed bag. I can go buy a bag at the store and everything, but you realize the differences from countries, the realities, the economic differences. So that was a touching moment being there. And then playing the tournament is, like I said, is Germany, Oman, 10,000 people, Ibarra, playing at high altitude. We had trained in Phoenix. Our lungs were out, but then once we got there, we were prepared. And we knew that, the group that we were in was a solid one. I think Brazil actually went to the final, if I'm correct, of that year. And so those are moments, and playing with those guys, I cherish that moment because I never went to a World Cup. So my highest moment in my career, but at that time, it's like I went to a World Cup. I measured myself against the best of the best of my age group. And so that moment, and scoring that goal, because after I scored, the coach told me at the moment that Canada had never scored at the under 17 year group. So my goal was now the first ever at the under 17 age group. And actually it took, I think, 15 years until we scored another goal, which was in, I think it's Maxime Crépeau, his generation that went to the World Cup. I think it's 2010, 2011, something like that in those years. So fun moments knowing that I was there representing Canada. And it's funny because we were sponsored by, I think it's Score. And we had Quasar boots. It was like brands that you don't even really you tell that the kids, they're like, what? That doesn't exist. So it was just funny, but wearing the jersey and then bonding with those guys, because we had a lot of tournaments. Guys from Ontario, from BC. We had tournaments. We were gone for a month. We were together. You become like brothers. You get to learn the guy from Toronto, how he lives, how he grew up, what team, what clubs are, and then you realize, hey, we played against each other in the tournament. And then you that's a moment where now I know some guys on Facebook, we go back and go, look, we played against together the under 17 World Cup, and you can't take that from us. It's a moment that in time that you will always cherish especially doing it at 15. It opens your eyes to the reality of what soccer is in the world, because in Canada, hockey is the number one sport. So we don't really talk about soccer. We're not considered soccer players. So that's fond memories from that age group at the 1995 World Cup.
Awesome, Patrice. Now that 95 team had like a lineup of a lot of local big names on the Canadian landscape who sadly, like, that was the pinnacle of their career. They didn't really go beyond that World Cup in 95. Do you recall or remember anyone from that team that you could say was like your favorite player or had the potential, but for whatever reason didn't
Oh, yeah. There's so many players in that team that were just talented. There's one from Quebec, Roberto Sorella. He's the one who passed me the ball for the goal that I scored. But guys from Toronto, Ontario, I remember Jamo. She had Kashka Walker, Danley Johnson, Ian Jeffries, Mark Smith, Aaron Benjamin. But I would say Jamo was the one that marked me the most. He was so instinctive in the final third, quick feet, always trying to find a way to dribble. A bit kind of like Dwayne De Rosario. That player that you feel like it's kind of the street. They just got that instinct to be able to create something on the spot, to be able to find a solution and create just an inch to be able to score or pass the goal. So I remember Jamoe was, we all thought at that moment, he's one of them that's going to probably go to Europe and establish his, have a career. But that's where you realize that there's so many things that come into play before you even make it to become a pro. So Jamo definitely a player that I remember. He was just one of those guys, if you put him in the street, you put him in a team, you're going to say, oh, that guy's a soccer player. That guy, he's got skill. You can see it right away the minute he touches the ball. I definitely remember that Jamo was one of those players that caught my eye from that group.
Yeah, Jamo's definitely one of those guys that is a legend. Legends that have never made it. Everybody has those stories.
Yeah, we have some. Don't worry, we have a lot of them also in Montreal. And so.
Oh, I could imagine, and I have a very good idea of some as well. Now you moved on from U Sports and played at Syracuse University. I remember you mentioning now that was your first time here where you fully immersed yourself in soccer and in your development. Your university period was brief. You quickly transitioned into the pro game. Up until this day, Patrice, that's almost a universal question for a lot of elite players in the North American landscape. Do I go to school and continue my education, or do I really jump off in the deep end now and follow this pro pathway, right? Maybe you could take us into your mind state behind going into school, and also, leading school to join the Impact.
Easy. Back before actually getting a scholarship, I always thought scholarships were for basketball or football, NCAA. So, because you didn't really hear in Canada, at least in Quebec, in terms of going to UConn, going to UCLA, you always hear these schools, but you think basketball, you think American football. And when I got the scholarship, I was like, oh, great, okay. And then finally, when I made the choice to go, you go to these schools and you realize, man, the schools are massive, and the sports and school scene in the U.S. is big, and it's probably I would say the best in the world in terms of being able to combine sports and still be able to go to school. So when I went there, I was like, great, this is a fantastic school. It was known for basketball. Syracuse has always been known for a great basketball program. But I saw it as this is an opportunity for me to play on a regular basis every day, hockey being put aside, and also competing against other kids that are at the time either deemed as good or better than you, other programs that are better than Syracuse, and older players. Because at the time, even though I had been bumped up the ranks when I was younger, you usually play your own age. Well, once you go to NCAA, you start playing 19, 20, 21, 22, all the way up to 24-year-old. So that was also a new challenge. But as I came in, I was finishing the under-20 program with the national team, with Paul James being my coach. And then I entered the under-23 group that's where I started training with Dwayne, Paul Stalteri, Jim Brennan, Robbie Arstedemo, all these guys that were already there. They are a 78, 77 group that were actually a very good under 20 group that went to Malaysia at the World Cup. So I joined in 98, 99 to that group. And I had to put my scholarship on hold for a semester because we were preparing for the 2000 Olympics. So we had a lot of camps in Vancouver, since Bruce Twan was based out of there. And so we had camps for 3 weeks. And it was already known by the school that I wouldn't be able to be in school for 3 or 4 months because there was one qualifier and then another and then another. So I jumped into that group. And after that group age, we didn't qualify for the World Cup. But that's why, like I mentioned before, I met Oziek Olger, who saw me and said, you're a good player, but you need to be in a professional environment. And that's what opened my eyes, saying, because he said, you can keep going that route, but you train 3 months, 4 months, you stop, and you play again, while Europe or most of the football world, they train 10 months. And so their curve progression keeps going for them to peak at another point or at a certain age. And so at my second year, I already knew. I came back after the World Cup the Olympic qualifiers that we didn't make. And I just told the coach of the school, I said, look, I think it's time for me to go pro. I just measured myself against guys a little bit older than me because I was a much younger age than most players under 23. And I felt that was the necessary step. But I had 2 years in university. To go, I know a lot of people are like academy, university, which one is the best? I cannot say if there's one that's the best. Yes, an academy, the TFC Academy, the Montreal Impact Academy, you're prepared to be a pro, but that does not mean you will be a pro. It's just the stepping stones are there, and the professional team is at the pinnacle of that program. While you still see guys that are at university who did well in their program and ended up becoming pros and actually having great careers as professionals. If I'm correct, I think Paul Stalteri, if he went to Clemson or Maryland, I don't remember, before making a step to Europe. There's a bunch of players, they went through the university ranks. Now the academy world has taken over in terms of the structure. So choosing between going all in is difficult because I saw Julian leave early. I saw a bunch of guys leave early. I saw other guys still be in university and still make it as a pro. So it's where you think is the necessary step for you to make. I would say try to stay in school as long as possible because the reality is there's a lot of free time you have. And once you go into that pro route, you start to just think in your main sport, and you realize that you could have just done other stuff in terms of keeping your schooling. So if you can stay in school as long as possible, I'd be say the best route. But then if you have an opportunity, take it. Because like I said, I took it when I was 18, 19, 20, became pro. And our system still allows us that you can go back to school. We're lucky that in Canada, it doesn't cost tens of thousands of dollars like in the US to go to proper schools. Because you never know when this opportunity is going to come again. That's the beauty of it. When there's an opportunity, you have to see, is it that door that's going to open me to other things, or is it going to close? And maybe I have to take another route. But definitely try to stay in school as long as possible. And even if you become a pro, maintain the connection with the school because you have so much free time, and keep your brain active and prepare yourself for after career because not everybody can play for a decade or more as a professional.
Nice. So let's talk about the professional ranks now. So you continued to grow as a professional and eventually made the move to Norway, beginning your career in Europe at Moss FK. What do you remember about that transition for you being difficult at that time? So what was difficult at the time for that transition to Norway?
Yeah, I was a pro, but this was the first time I'm leaving home for good. As a national team is great, you leave, but you always come back. Now, as like I'm pursuing my dream to be a professional in Europe. I arrive in Norway, and the thing is, I don't know much about Norway. So yeah, I know the country, you know, they've been to World Cups, you know, they're great in skiing, but I never lived there. I don't know what the conditions are, and I definitely don't know the language. So the difficulties are even, say, anxious, is when I arrived over there. Is like, I already knew Rob Friend was there, but when you arrive, you don't know who's is somebody going to be able to translate. Do they speak English? Because like I said at the time, the internet is like, it's not now where you could go, oh, okay, Google Translate. You're meeting somebody, you don't know if they'll be able to speak your language, so you're a bit like, how's it going to work? You know, I got to talk on the field, but before that, I still got to talk with people. So those were some of the first difficulties, which realizing that, okay, there's going to be a language barrier. How's this going to work? Currency, they have the Norwegian kroner, living expenses, all that. And I went as a trialist at the first, so it wasn't like I signed. I went there for a 1-week trial, so I didn't know if I was going to stay. It was like, okay, I got to prove myself. And then I'm slowly realizing this surroundings is completely different from what I'm used to. And not to be shy, but there's not that many foreigners in Norway at the time, or at least colored foreigners, that's for sure. So when I get there, it's the language, the culture. They have snow like us, but a lot of snow or winter. But it was the first life experience that's going to last. It's not just going to Ecuador, knowing you're there for 2-3 weeks, and then you're coming back home. It's you're going there and you're gone for 10 months. You might come home for a week. You got to make new friends. You got to find an apartment, new living conditions, and then perform. All of that. Because before performing is great. You're at home. You have your parents. You have your support network. But now you're on your own. Calling your parents, yes, it's on the phone. They're thousands of kilometers away, and you got to perform. And when you have highs, it's great. But when you have lows, you just come back and you're by yourself. It's great to talk to your friends, your girlfriend, everything, but there's nobody there to change your mindset, going to walk out, or your friends to tell you still the best. So this was the first, like, I'm testing myself there. I'm sending myself to the wild. People might say, yeah, it's Norway, but you have to prove yourself anywhere. And this was a new territory, and I had to show myself on the field and be able to adapt so that it doesn't affect my performances on the field, and I don't feel like, oh, did I take the right decision? Should I come back home? My parents, my friends, everything that I known for years and years. So it was a test, it was a challenge, and those were difficult moments, especially when you don't perform as well, because when you go back home, you realize, okay, I got to learn a language, I got to communicate with new teammates, coach. I started understanding one here, but some guys talk English, but they don't always have time to translate for you. So there's all sorts of difficulties. Those were the first life challenges, not just football challenges, life challenges that I had to face. And it was great. Norway's a fantastic country, and I had some great moments, but those were definitely the first challenging moments of my adult life and as a sports professional soccer player.
And now you could say your time, I guess, in Norway, like you just said, it was very challenging because it's new to you and it was very foreign, but we could kind of summarize it as being very successful. Your 4 years there, in a short period of time, you'd moved on from one club to Tromsø very quickly. You became a very key point of play for them as a key player, or had a key role with them. How would you kind of summarize or say your game evolved in 4 years of being in Norway?
Yeah, it was very different because at the time I had started with the Montreal Impact in the USL. I think the Toronto Lynx, I don't know if they still exist. That's I'm not sure, but the Toronto Lynx were the team of Toronto at the time before Toronto FC existed. So I had 3 years of professionals, but like I said before, I was jumping into what is Europe. Yeah, it's Norway, but it's another type of football. These guys, they've played football most of their lives. They grew up in football. So how am I going to be able to compete against them? Am I as good as playing at home in A-League? And I went there. Great. I was able to adapt quickly and perform. And also people that I know, but there was a Canadian not renaissance, but there was a big Canadian moment of players playing in Norway at the time. Marco Reda, Lars Hirschfeld, Kenny Stamatopoulos, Steven Adomolu, Atiba was going to Sweden. You had Chris Pozniak. There's about Olivier Ocean, Ali Gerba. So there was 8 or 9. Kevin De Serpa was there. So there was about 8 or 9 Canadians starting to move into the ranks in terms of in Norway and performing. Did 4 years there. Did really well. Established myself as a key player on my team, key player in the league. Even almost left. I can't say Atiba took my spot because it's like years apart, but I could have gone to Besiktas. Unfortunately, my club didn't want to sell me there in 2005. But in terms of the league, it was a direct league. You know, I always taught myself was play short passes, quick possession. I could play while the Norwegian league is very direct. Sometimes skips the middle. So that was also a challenge where in Montreal, I was playing as a number 10 or a center midfielder. And now I was coming into a league where they didn't like build-up. They bypassed everything. And once they were installed in the offensive zone, that's where they started being a little bit more creative. But so checking back to the ball. So now you had to start paying attention in my game to space because everybody wants to get on the ball, touch it, give it, get it back. And now you realize they're just bypassing you. So how do I get the second ball? And they're big on they call it indreløper. It's called the number 8 position, but they call them runners because they're the guys who usually collect the second ball. And it was trying to figure out where now could I get the ball since I can't drop back. Where can I get the ball in pockets or the second ball and start playing my game and be able to be myself and to express myself, even though this type of game is not necessarily suited to my game. And so it went well. And when I went to Tromsø, I'm lucky because the coach there brought me in to be that link. Most teams kind of skip the midfield, but he felt he was playing a certain way where he had a lot of good offensive players, but he needed somebody that could do the link properly. And he had older, aging players that were probably going to leave. So allowed me to play my game. So once I reached Tromsø, I was able to express myself the way I wanted because now he was like, give the ball. You can let Patrice have the ball in these places and he'll be that first guy who'll make that pass to the offensive midfielder, to the forward. So, but it was a challenge because it's an athletic league. At least back then, it was very demanding. You know, I'm not going to lie. I'm a Caribbean kid. I like the ball to my feet. And I was an offensive player before when I was a kid. So get it to my feet, then I start doing the talking. Now it was like, you got to move because the ball is just skipping you. So you got to keep running. You got to push yourself. I would say the demands physically to the game is always up and down. They really play north-south. So you either start jogging with your hands on your hip and say, wait, I'll wait for the ball, or start moving and say, okay, I got to get fitter. I want the ball. I want to be part of the action all the time. So that definitely challenged me in terms of physically to get myself fitter. I did well. I'm happy that I left my good name over there and performed well because this was the first challenge outside of playing in North America. And I was able to adapt to that league. And that's where I realized also I'm adapting to the league, but I want to move to the bigger leagues, or at least the bigger countries where that's everybody wants the dreams to play, which is in England and at the time France, Spain, Germany, and Italy.
Let's circle back to your national team career. You know, your move to Tromsø, also came at the same time where you started a really wonderful career. With the full men's national team, being a real part of a fantastic generation. And I clearly, distinctly remember you, being a guy that, at that time, was able to run, but also able to, be depended on for skill and technique and, proper link-up play. Maybe you can take us to some of your favorite memories, of your national team career that stick out over, a wonderful time.
Yeah, matter of fact, the minute I went to Norway, I got a call up. I would say back then we knew that if you played in Europe, the minute you headed to Europe or once you were playing in Europe, it, let's say, opened a bit more doors to getting to the national team. You still had to do well, but because the coach at the time, Ozek Oger, was German, fond of European football. North American soccer wasn't, the MLS wasn't really as known, wasn't considered as a place where you really could progress your skills. So once I went to Norway, I got a call up in March to play against Estonia. That was my first time called up. It's not my first cap, my first time called up. My roommate at the time was Julian de Guzman. He was in Germany at the time. This was the first time I'd heard of Julian, but I never had played because he's 2 years younger. He's 81, if I'm correct. So I heard of him. I know he played with Ali Gerba, who I knew from Montreal. I know he was in France, that went to Germany. So this is, like I told you, I knew Paul Stalteri, Jimmy Brennan, they were in the national team at the time, but Julian was, I think, one of the first times he's called up. Atiba Hutchinson, it's one of the first times he's called up also. So we play Estonia, but I don't play a minute. Ozek Oger calls me up, but I don't play a minute. It's a friendly. You think that, you could join into the game, but I don't. So my first true cap was that same year, at the end of the year, and that I will never forget because it's in November. We play Czech Republic. Czech Republic at the time is number 3 in the world. And 1 month later, Pavel Nedved is called Golden Ball Player of the Year, Ballon d'Or. And so we're playing Czech Republic. This is 2003. And you have Pavel Nedved, Poborski, Jan Koller, Rosicky. Peter Cech had not left to Chelsea yet. You had Jan Kolowski left back. Their team was stacked with players that are going to be playing in big clubs or were playing at the big clubs at the time. And that was my first cap. I played right midfield. We got crushed. The first half was 1-0, but second half they crushed us. It was 5-0. But that was my first time with the national team. And that's where I realized international football was another step. Like you were in Norway, I was doing well in Norway. You always tell yourself, okay, I'm one of the better players in Norway, but now you're measuring yourself against the better players in the world, and you're playing with Canada. At the time, same thing as the moment now that's happening in Canada. There was a lot of young players coming through. Like I mentioned, Julian de Guzman, Atiba, even though Paul Stalteri, Jim Brennan were already established, others were slowly coming through, a good generation. And then I started off from there. We played Ireland the next game. And then from there on, I stayed with the national team. And then I kind of grew with all the guys that were coming through and the guys that were already slowly establishing themselves, the 78s, doing the Rosario, Paul Stalteri, Jimmy Brennan, Lars Hirschfeld, Kevin McKenna, Julian de Guzman, Atiba Hutchinson was starting to come in through, Ian Hume. Then you have Josh Simpson, guys from the West Coast starting to join in also. Me, Al Gerba from the East Coast, where Olivier Ocean was slowly getting more playing time or more call-ups. And with that group, once we started playing through it together, we realized, man, we're good players. We're good players, but it's not till 2007 Gold Cup. And I will always remember what Stephen Hart told us before the Gold Cup, because we had Frank Yallop, but he stayed for a short period of time, and Stephen Hart had to take over as an interim before the Gold Cup. And he always told us, same thing as Frank Yallop, like, you're as good as the U.S. It's just for some reason when we go on the field, we don't show, or we don't play with that same swagger or that, I can't say arrogance or confidence. Because we're all good individually, and we actually at the time we were all doing quite well individually in our clubs, but at the national team, we didn't really excel. We weren't able to gel and perform. And before the 2007 World Cup, he told us, "I don't think you know how good you guys are really." And then we go out to play Costa Rica. Julian scores 2 goals, and then we go out and we lose in the semifinals with we all know that goal should have counted. But unfortunately, I don't like to open wounds, but I think that was the defining moment in that generation for that group. That's where I realized, man, we should have beaten the States. Everybody started looking at us like, those Canadian guys, Julian, I'm not sure if correct if Julian got player of the tournament, or I know he was in the team of the tournament.
That's
and he was in Deportivo, and he was playing well, and he was already, I think, player of the year in Deportivo also. But that's where people are saying, wait, these Canadians can play. Like, it's not just Canada sitting back, defending, as we always had grown up in the national program, where defend, committed, Canadian pride, where it's, we're hardworking. No, we have swagger. We can play. We can dictate the games. We can have possession. We showed it to Costa Rica. We showed it against the States. We beat Guatemala. So that 2007 Gold Cup is the highlight of my period with the national team. But it's also, let's say, a sad moment, because we never were able to repeat that at the World Cup qualifying stage. And it's sad because when you look at those players where they were playing at the time, all starters in their team, not necessarily everybody's in the big league, but everybody's a star in their team. Meaning you're playing significant minutes. You're not just on the bench playing Europe. You're on your team and you're considered one of the star players. And we weren't able to qualify for World Cup with that group. When you look at the names and you look at the careers, you go, something's odd there. Why these guys, Dwayne excelling in MLS, Julian excelling in La Liga, Atiba was going from Sweden to Denmark, then slowly after that to Holland. I was doing very well in Norway. I ended up going to Germany. All these guys were, Ian Hume was in third, I think it's League One, going to championship, excelling as a scorer. A bunch of other guys, everybody was doing well. But as a group, for Canada, we weren't able to repeat that moment at the Gold Cup. And I think it's our own fault, because I think we were never able to simply, I think you all look at The Last Dance, Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, to just tell ourselves, this is our moment. This is where we can define Canadian soccer, and to put it bigger than ourselves. And that's where I think maybe it was difficult, it was complex, because the players, it was still the program at the time. Everybody wants to prove themselves, but that group, in terms of talent, should have done better. We should have done better than just a semifinal at the Gold Cup.
So let's just back up again. I love what you said about that, and I love the fact that in your answers you're making references to your teammates, and it seems to me that you are definitely a true teammate, because you always make reference to the team, to the guys you played with. And for our boys and girls that are watching this, it's very important to understand, even with the career that you've had, you always make reference to the team. There's really no I in team. It's about the team and the guys you played with, and how and listening to you speak, you talk about how proud you are of your Canadian teammates and their accomplishments as well, right? And I think that's fantastic. But let's just talk about Kaiserslautern now. So you get to Kaiserslautern, and funny enough, so Coach Manny, his son plays for Kaiserslautern right now, believe it or not, the U19. So I know Kaiserslautern is a very a special club for all of us. So you're at Kaiserslautern, returning from Scandinavia, rounding out your solid European career. Culturally, playing in Europe carries much more pressure as opposed to here. What are some moments that you recall distinctly feeling heavy pressure to perform in your time there? How did you react to those challenges mentally?
My time in Germany, if I would say one more moment in my career where I would have, if I could go back and change certain things, it would be in Germany. Because as I arrived, I was coming in for Norway. And like I said before, when you're a kid, you want to go play in the big countries, in the big clubs. You want to measure yourself against the best. And as I arrived in Kaiserslautern, understanding that Kaiserslautern is a big club in Germany, their history is very rich. And when you get there, you understand it very easily. So before I go back to regrets, I go back to when I got there, came in a free transfer. And for me, it was like, man, I'm here. Now I'm in Germany, and I understand that there's much more eyes and other clubs. Even though we were in Bundesliga 2 at the time, you're telling yourself, if we do well, we go up. But even if we don't do as well, if I do well, I may go to the next level. But that summer, I got married. Same thing, Gold Cup. Everything was very good. Everything was great, and then when you arrive there, the motivation to drive yourself to always excel kind of, because I was very good in Norway, so I told myself I'm going to be very good in Germany. But then you get in Germany, the players, okay, not only they're just Germans, but now you're playing against very top talent from, let's say, more Central Europe. And I would say also in Germany, the mindset of players is different than in Norway. Norway is a bit more like Canada, very about collectivity, group, everybody. Well, when you come in Germany, now it's about performing, and everybody wants to be in a starting 11. Let's say the selfish mindset is a bit more installed in terms of everybody wants to do the same, prove, play, move on to the next stage. So I arrived there. Things went very well for the first 2 games, but then I got a red card, missed out, and the team didn't do so well. And then I followed a bit the path of the club, which was we were going downhill. We didn't do so well, and you always tell yourself, I'm going to be able to move the guys to the next level, but it wasn't. And the pressures to say how the difference is from Germany and Norway. Norway, you're playing around 10, 12, 15. The bigger clubs, maybe 20,000. And if you play a cup final, maybe over 20,000. Bundesliga 2, I'm playing against Gladbach, Mainz, Cologne, Offenheim. 7 or 8 clubs there are Bundesliga structured, meaning they could be in the top rank, no problem. And you're playing in front of 40, 50, 60,000 people. The difference also is in Norway or in Canada, fan bases are 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 maybe at best, maybe 5,000 the bigger clubs. Just Kaiserslautern behind the wall. Borussia Dortmund has known for their wall, but Kaiserslautern has behind a goal around 12 to 15,000 that are die-hard fans. Not just your local supporter that's coming, want to watch the game. They bleed red, being the Kaiserslautern being the Red Devils. And when I arrived there, we weren't doing so well towards the end of the year. I wasn't playing as much anymore. And significant pressure moment, or at least you realize what bubble you're living in. After a game, we lose to Offenheim, which is at the time Bundesliga 2, and it's about to become a big, very important club in Germany. And we stay in front of the fans. The coach sits us in front of the fans after the game. They're going mad. They hate us pretty much because we're not performing to the standard of what FC Kaiserslautern is. Because FC Kaiserslautern, for them, it's Champions League. Yuri Djorkaeff, who played there. I think Miroslav Klose played there. Balak, Marco Basel. A bunch of players before going to Bayern Munich played there or played at the high period of Kaiserslautern. So, and Kaiserslautern is, in terms of history, they won 4 times. So I think they're 4th or 5th in terms of winning titles. So after the game, we're in the VIP section with our families and everything, and we're waiting until you see a bunch of people moving and in a hurry, and you're like, "What's happening?" Oh, fans are waiting for us outside the stadium, and you're like, "Fans, okay." You look outside the window, 5,000-6,000 fans in front of the gate where the cars are parked, just waiting for you. And waiting for you because you're not upholding the standard of what Kaiserslautern is and hoping to go to Bundesliga. And we were at the bottom of Bundesliga 2 at the time. And that's where I realized that it's not Norway. It's not Canada. This is how you treat the Montreal Canadiens or maybe the Maple Leafs. And I would say even worse, because I think we're nice with you don't get bothered in the street. I couldn't go, like you go walk outside after a loss in the Kaiserslautern, people are staring at you. And you understand they're all wondering, what are you doing? You should be at home concentrating on the next game. And to go on to after that game with the fans, the following day, training, 4,000 fans show up at the training facility. They have a banner. We demand only blood. Meaning when you play, you have to go until you drop. There's no other, no standard. It's not even qualifying. It's you have to play till you cannot run anymore. That was it. And they had flares. This is training. We're actually having a normal training, but they're there. Banners and chanting. And of course, the German players are explaining to us a bit more, the meaning of everything. Then you realize this is not playing at your local park where everybody thinks you're a star, where you nutmeg somebody, and then when you lose, you just go home. Your parents say, there's another game. This is where, for some people, this club means more than just everything. This is their everyday life. This is, when you talk about tradition, this is what it means to them. And that we are not respecting their values, their standards of where that club, the city, what it represents. So then you understand that this is no longer just you play the game because you love it. You still play it because you love it, but you have to respect the club you play for, and that you have to perform. And if you don't perform, people will keep you accountable. And that's the reality when you play in these top countries, top clubs, and you're paid well, so they know that too. So the pressure is that where you realize this is more than playing for the Montreal Canadiens. This is more than playing for the Toronto Leafs. You can go and eat at the restaurant and you're okay in Canada. People might heckle you a little bit, but it won't so bad. There, people, they make sure they understand that you're not welcome. You got to stay home until you win again.
That's just crazy. The cultural, I guess, mindset of just fans and the ultras or the hardcore supporters in Europe. It's unfathomable to like hear that here in North America. Like you said, you could be on the Leafs, lose 7 games in a row, and still eat at the local restaurant, and 10 fans will still want your picture, not 50 fans ready to like call you out on your performances and stuff. So that on its own, the pressure of it and all is just massive. I don't want to discount the 3 years post Kaiserslautern where you spent in the Danish league, but let's fast forward a little bit to now your time of coming back to Montreal. Like absolutely nothing short of like legendary, and like the role you played with the club's introduction into the MLS and getting back into the league out of the lower ranks. What do you remember when you first came back to the club as having grown since the time you left before going over to Europe?
Yeah, when I came back in 2012, I think it was a big eye-opener to where soccer has progressed to, and MLS. Because the club had grown. I was coming back this summer, so I saw Stade Saputo existed, 13,000 seaters. But now once I reached MLS 2012, then it was media. It's a new league. I made the choice to come back because I still had a contract where I was in Denmark. I had just a clause that allowed me to come back if it was not just the Impact, but if it was a possibility to come back home. And so when I came back, then I realized, okay, now it's 20,000 people, but you're at home. Let's say the pressures that, I lived in Europe, they come back because now I didn't grow up in the internet age. You couldn't watch Bundesliga 2 on TV like you could do now. So most people did not necessarily see me play that often. Yeah, once in a while with the Canadian national team, but if you don't play a great game, people are like, okay, Patrice is good, but they don't see you on an every weekend basis. So coming back home was playing at home, playing in my hometown, and also saying that, look, the Americans can play, the Europeans can play, the South Americans can play, but I think the Canadians, I can play too. And now we're on the bigger stage because it's the MLS. So it was to come back home to say, hey, the standard of a Canadian player is still as good or is still high. Because we're judged upon how the national team does. If you don't go to the World Cup, you're not deemed like, good World Cup country unless you've gone in the past, or you're nurtured through soccer has been around for hundreds of years. So coming back, there was pressure because now I'm going to play in front of my friends, family, and people who now know the name, but not necessarily seen you really play. So you still have to kind of like now go to the standard they expect you to be. And when I came, then there was a lot of media. You have to be the local guy that has to answer the questions. You're the identity that the people link themselves to, because you're from the place, you're from Canada, you speak the language. So all that also started playing in terms of the stuff that in Europe they protected you from, while in North America, media is a big part of the sports scene. And so that I had to get adjusted to, where now you're in front of the camera every day, and you have to be able to balance concentrating on what you want to do on the field and be able to answer questions about soccer, and sometimes questions that you feel that are not necessarily soccer related. So it was a big step. It was nice, but it was a challenge. And even though the first few games, I played the first 4 games, I got on the bench. And then also you left Europe to come back home and you're on the bench. So that was a challenge to set up and say, look, I didn't come here to be on the bench. I came here to prove that I can play. And I, especially as a local talent, I can play with the best of them in this league. And ended up quite well. 2012, I got to be player of the year. And then and have my best stats career. I won't say it's my best season in my career, but in terms of statistically, it's my best season. I had 9 goals, 8 assists. You can ask for better in terms of answering to the critics, or at least setting the tone in terms of who you are as a soccer player. And I'm coming back at 32, so I'm refined. Europe refined me. I got there, was a brute talent from Canada, played a little bit, but then I understand the chess game of what soccer is. Not just we go out there and we play. It's no, there's parts, there's positions, there's link ups, there's movements, there's space, there's all the, and so that was a chance to also show that I was not just a soccer player. I was a soccer mind. I saw the game. I was able to play with Marco Di Vaio, Alessandro Nesta, Matteo Ferrari, and DJ Drogba, and be able to say, to have those guys say, he can play. He can play. And that's probably the highest compliment I have, is having those guys say, that guy can play. And having Thierry praise me highly above the guys I was playing with. So those were challenges, but it was great because now you're at home, you're in Canada, and you're saying, Canadian soccer, yeah, we can play too.
Yeah, most definitely. I think throughout the course of this conversation, I could tell it's, just in terms of your, team first approach, and just the aspect that you're just so open to your surroundings. I could easily see, why now you've transitioned, successfully to an elite level of coaching in North America. So, now looking at it from the other side of the line now, and coming from the coaching perspective, what are some of the things that you think are important for this generation of players in Canada, as the game continues to evolve in the MLS and globally? It's definitely a much different time than the time you were trying to dig through, and I think your story of Soccer Saturday and bringing tapes, like back in our generation, to get soccer, like we had to suffer to even just get a piece of it. Now it's just such at the forefront, and some of our players are now at the forefront. What would you advise a player from North America these days, maybe with a dream to play in Europe, maybe with a dream to play at that top level, moving forward, looking at it from a coaching perspective?
Looking forward to the young kids, if I could say something, is, for one, work ethic, 2, determination, and 3, it's confidence, or mental, can't say mental toughness, just mental state. The reality is, now, yes, soccer is a lot more out there, but it's not because there's more soccer that there's just going to be it's just given to you. You still have to work for it. You have to go there and grind your skill set. You have to keep working at it. And as I tell players when I finished, younger players that are from here or that I got to accustom to get close to, every day somebody's playing soccer, somebody's doing more than you. How much are you doing to be able to be the best you can be? Not the best of, we all, the professional ranks is great, and you want to be the best of the best, the best you can be, meaning, do you repeat things? Do you do things? Do you get there before training to work on certain of your skill set, technique, or other parts of your game that you need to work on? Or you're doing video, because now you have video. Before, yes, it was VHS, you had to cut it out, but now you have video. You have coaches probably cut out the video for you even more. You can see your games. Even at a youth level now, I think trainings are taped, games are taped. You can watch yourself. I couldn't watch myself back then. Tournaments, maybe, yeah, but you just watch at your goals. Now you can keep watching and learn the game. But work ethic is what you do 10, 15 minutes before you get to training, before the coach gets there, before the coach lays out the cones, or even when the players are there and everybody's goofing around. What are you doing after training to perfect your craft? That's work ethic. Because I know I grew up work. You always combine running. I got to do more running. No, it's not just worrying. It's just doing what you are good at more and more so that you're better at. I consider these three things. The more you repeat something, then you get to master it. The more you master it, it builds your self-confidence. Then you have confidence of trying to do something else, and it allows you to repeat it at the highest level. So when you repeat, you master, you develop self-confidence, and you're able to repeat it at the highest level, which is game time. Determination, because you got to be determined. And one thing I realized in the professional ranks, it's not about talent. Talent, everybody who's made the professional ranks is talented. Their talent is different. Tackling, passing, running, everybody has a skill set, something that's different than the other. That's their talent. But now how much, maybe it jumps into how much do you really want it? How much are you pushing yourself to, now don't push yourself to the ground, because there's workload. Now there's a lot of stuff that's put into place that you don't overdo it. But are you determined to do the next thing? Are you determined to learn more? Are you determined to really get to the professional ranks? And now we're lucky because MLS, CPL, national team is doing well. There's a lot of good things happening in the soccer world right now. You could be part of it. You could be the next Alphonso Davies. You could be the next Julian de Guzman or Atiba Hutchinson. And you can make Canada go to the next step, which is to be consistently at the World Cup, to be consistently on the big stage. So, you watch all these YouTube motivational videos. It's not lies. It's what you want to be. And I go back to Last Dance, Michael Jordan. If you look at his mindset, he became Michael Jordan because he had a mindset, because he decided that this is my standard. You follow me. I don't follow below me. I want to go to the next level. I have to shoot 100 free throws after training. I'll shoot 100 free throws. I have to shoot crosses, corners, long passes, inside passes, trap the ball, headers, body, coordination, quick feet, moving your body, all that stuff. Do that. Mental, because you're not always going to be the star. You're not always, doors are going to be closed. And when a door closes, that does not mean there's not another door that could be open. And you have to be ready for that. And you have to learn that through adversity, you grow. Because I'm going to tell you one thing is, I did a lot of good things. And yes, probably like Dwayne, like Atiba, like Julian, they were all probably the better players of their, but the minute they join the higher rank, you realize, man, there's a guy that's as good or better than me, or I'm on the bench. Why? And what do I do now? Do I just sink and say, this is my faith? Or do I say, nah, I got to do more because I believe I deserve to be on the field, but I have to prove it. I have to show at it, and I have to work my craft. And it's tough. And as I always tell every kid, every player in their career has been on the bench. No matter if your name is Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Zidane, you were on the bench. No matter what reason, coach, injury, rotating, you're on the bench. And it's how much you wanted to not be on the bench as often and take those moments to say, next time I'm going to be on the field, I'm going to just do a little bit more. So work ethic, determination, and I'd say global mental state in terms of your mindset. How much do you really want it? I played hockey, and I really wanted to play soccer, and I just followed my passion. And last, I would say passion. Because do something you really love. Don't just do it because people want you to do it. Played soccer because I really like it. I could play with my friends at the park, even though I was a pro. And I'm pretty sure Ainsley can answer that for Jules. You could say, let's kick a ball, let's go play. The most competitive place is with your friends at the park. And that's where the true passion starts. And that's what carries you into your professional career, to realize you're maybe paid to do what you're doing, but you're doing because you like it, because that passion pushes you to say, today I'm going to train because I like it. Today I don't want to get up, but I'm still going to go train because I like it. And in the bad moments, you're going to go because I love football and I'm doing what I love. And I may not be able to do this my whole life. So enjoy every moment of it, because it's great. Even though you don't make it to the pros, it's a great path, and you're probably around a lot of coaches who wanted to were in the game or teaching you the game, which in the past, we probably didn't have that many coaches that could teach us the game as properly as it is now. So we all have a responsibility, and especially now more as coaches, because we're passing it along. But for you, next generation, work at it, because it's not easy, but you'll enjoy it once you reach the next step, which is not necessarily pro. It's just the next step that you can reach.
No doubt, Patrice. One thing definitely I can say, myself, Ainsley, Manny, and many others, at least in our age, and players that have played, and just enthusiasts of the game. You're a great human, and like honestly a great sporting icon for the province of Quebec. Now you're a much needed voice, and like, I guess, a brain and ambassador that we need to be helping push Canadian football forward. Quebec is obviously one of the big three in producing football talent. You got obviously Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. Much like Ontario, we can imagine there are individuals, clubs, administrations, academies that want like football pushed forward. And to be better overall level for development of the game. I guess, what are some of the things you feel that can be worked to help get Quebec going forward and pushing in the same direction, obviously forward for Canadian football as well?
First thing that comes to mind is I know now that the structure is even greater than before. The demand becomes greater than before, but it's not to forget that it's a game. Because I know a lot of parents out there, even kids, even other people, think that you're a professional when you're under 5, under 8. Let them enjoy the game. Let them learn the game. You play the game, you have fun, then you want to learn the game because you like it. And then you pass on. And that's why I think I jumped in the coaching world, because I love the game first and foremost. So that is, there's structures. Don't look at it, I'm going to play for TFC, I'm going to play for Montreal Impact, I'm going to play for Barcelona or Real Madrid. Look at it, I'm going to learn and be the best today at what I can do and be better than yesterday. So I think already there is, we're tendency of becoming like in hockey, where we're seeing the dollar signs in the professional ranks. Let them enjoy the game. That's if I get to say to clubs. And I think there's a platform now being put in place that tries to take away, I can't say the competitive, because competitive is natural, but just don't consider about winning the game 5-0 against. It's about every kid playing and improving, because the guy who maybe didn't win 5-0 when he was under 5 is probably playing pro later on. After that, one thing that I realized that I don't know everything in Ontario. I haven't seen everything in Quebec. But the more the game grows, the more kids become they have more football IQ. They understand the game faster because they have proper coaching, and there's a lot more tactics. But we take away the 1v1 part of the game, which is kind of the street part, but I won't say street because it's not tricks. It's just 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, where you learn a lot of the aspects that you're going to learn at a 11-11 stage, which is 1v1. It's not just about, I know people think 1v1 is taking on somebody 1v1 and then I go bypass them. 1v1 is you have to be creative. Is maybe I'm not fast. How can I bypass this player? How am I going to be able to come out of this situation with the skill set that I have? Shabih became Shabih. He's not the fastest player in the world, but his brain functions. But 1v1, I'm pretty sure he's quicker than me in terms of, I may be faster than him, but I'm sure he's quicker in his mind. So the 1v1 is for me, is a great tool because it teaches a lot of the overall game without you realizing, creating space to get the ball, 1v1, protecting the ball, shielding, going right, going left, finding areas to be able to find. I think that's kids, from what I noticed, are maybe not as tuned to come out of tight situations because they see the game, but they're taught to play 1 or 2 touch really early. And so they just think of, I got to pass the ball 2 touch, when sometimes there's a situation where you can maybe come out of it on a 1v1. And then after that, look, we have CPL that's coming in. So I think the structure of the ladder is slowly completing itself, because I know there was a big gap. There's a lot of players that got lost. If you don't make it to the MLS team, or if you're not in Europe, what do I do? Now the CPL, that's a great place to nurture, to keep developing, because not everybody becomes a pro at 18, it becomes Alfonso Davies at 18. You sometimes become a very good player by the time you're groomed in the professional ranks. I started when I was 20, and I learned the game at that time. Mostly that, I'd say small-sided games. I think that's where 1v1, 2v2, 3v3. Where do you start playing? You start playing at the park, on your street, in your backyard, at school when it was a recess. Those are the places where you learn things that will help you out in the controlled environment of club. Will you think outside the box? Because like I said, in club structure now, you have coaches with the right licenses, the right structures of practices. But can you be a player that thinks outside the box? And thinking outside the box is sometimes playing in environments that lets you try out stuff differently. And I think coaches should also give leeway sometimes of just play, be creative. Because the guys that I know, Dwayne De Rosario, Julian Atiba, and all these other guys, what I could say at 1v1, they were great players. As much as you can say they were great midfielders, great forwards, they were creative. They found solutions, even though tight situations. And so not forgetting the base of the game, because we always see 11v11 and the tactics, and they had to learn to play all this way. You had to learn how to play on number 6. Play as well. And last, don't be afraid of putting players in other positions. I was an offensive and forward my whole career, my whole youth, and I ended up being a defensive center mid. I remember Julian de Guzman. He was a number 10 in the under 20 World Cup with the under 20 team, Paul James, and he ended up being a defensive mid. Other players, Ali Gerba was a defender, and he ended up a striker with probably one of the best goal ratio. So every position teaches you something and allows you to see the game differently, which will at the end help you in one position or maybe several.
So that's fantastic. Fantastic way to explain to our youth, about things, not just our youth, but also our coaches as well, right? Like what we can focus more on. But let's have a little fun though.
Let's go.
Have a little fun now. So I want you to tell me the greatest leader that you played with in your career. Who was that one player that took you under his wing and was a great leader for you?
I would say took me under his wing, but being with Didier Drogba, I was captain at the time, but he helped me tremendously because I wasn't playing at the time when he arrived. Mm-hmm. And that guy, you see why, let's say, a war stopped in Ivory Coast. You see why he established for himself in his career, and you see why a lot of people say certain things about him. Not just the soccer aspect. I'm talking about the person, the leader, the human. So with him, it was fantastic. Just seeing how he unites guys, open doors. He was a big international star, but he was just one of the boys, one of the players, and it was great to exchange with him and to understand realities of Chelsea and the higher level, but also because he was in Montreal and as a leader and who he was, that it was probably the player that I know in terms of leadership. When you talk to me about leadership, definitely the name DJ Drogba is the first in mind.
What is your proudest moment for club and country?
Ooh, good
Just
question.
All we need is one.
Club, goal versus TFC in the playoffs 2015.
Why you gotta bring that up? Of all things, you gotta
Why?
bring
Because I spent the whole year on the bench. Guy told me I couldn't play at 35, and we played TFC, which is our rival over here. I scored the first goal and give an assist to Jesus Drogba. We win our first playoff home game. That was the first playoff game for TFC. A lot of things. TFC went on to do other things after that, but that's that game, that goal means a lot. It's not just because TFC, it's just because of the year. There was a lot that came in. It just ended up being against my arch rivals. You can't, when you write a script, you say, hey, if I could play against them, it would be perfect. So it ended up being a great script. That's club. National level, I would say, definitely Gold Cup 2007. Being with that group of players, like I said, I'm happy because I lived it, but I'm sad because I think we should have done more. But we kind of said, hey, we can play. We told people were starting to pay attention to, these Canadians guys, they can play. Got to pay a little bit more attention to them. We always looked at U.S., Mexico, maybe Costa Rica. Now it was Canada was on the doorstep. So I would say 2007 Gold Cup.
What was your most fond memory of a loss?
Loss?
Yeah.
Easy. 2016 lost to the TFC. We won 3-2. We were leading 3-0. We could have just locked it down at home. But I'm happy I lived it because it's probably part of Canadian soccer. In terms of 100,000 people came to watch us play seating. I think it's probably some of the games that are, in terms of TV, highest rated games watched. And probably the biggest rivalry in MLS. The Americans can say what they want, but Montreal, Toronto, it's bigger than the Cascada Cup, bigger than DC versus New York Red Bulls. That is definitely a loss because I was Canadian, captain of a Canadian team, Canadian coach, Canadian owner. It would have been great to be at the final, have a Canadian Cup, the MLS Cup, but yeah, that's a loss. I can replay that game, and I got to put there that the Champions League final too, because we were 45 minutes away from going to the Club World Cup.
That's right. Okay, nice. And then tell us about the fondest memory of a win. Did we talk about the win?
But I did say Toronto TFC, so talking about win is definitely that game. It sticks into my mind. That's the first thing when I think it's that game, that goal, assist to Drogba, 3-0 at home. You can't write any better than that.
That's right. Okay. So then that leads me to the last question, and this question we've asked all of our webinarees. Can you tell us your starting 11? So
now my starting 11, there has to be any player I've played with, or
only players you've played with.
Okay.
And you have to include yourself in the starting 11. And I'll even throw you a lifeline. I'll give you 3 subs.
3 subs?
3 subs.
Okay.
Only 3 subs.
There's sometimes politics involved in this.
Good question.
We couldn't get the starting 11 from Atiba because it looks like he was going to have problems in Turkey.
He couldn't get out of his. Hey, Atiba, you didn't put me.
Let's think about these.
He's still playing. I'm retired. He's still playing.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll start with the midfield because you told me I'm in it, so I'm in it. Definitely. I think I didn't have the chance to play with them often, even though they always told us that we should play together, but they didn't. Playing with Atiba, with Julian in the middle. And for me, Julian, 2007 is the best I've ever seen a Canadian play, like dominate. Like when you say he's better than anybody else on anybody else's team, Julian was in another sphere, and he was excelling. He was doing very well at Deportivo La Coruña. So 2007. So I have to have Julian, and Atiba is probably the one who has been the most consistent, highest performer for Canada in the last few years. He's won every Canadian, except for now, Alfonso probably win it. Before that, they almost called it the Atiba Chitzen Trophy. So with them in the midfield, yeah, because I was loved, and I wouldn't play the craftiness they have, the IQ. It's easy to play with them. In terms of other midfielders I played, I don't see any other players that I consider better. Maybe some are on par, but not better. Right. Then in goals, that's a good question. Goalie. Lars Hirschfeld, when he was at his best, he could pull off. And I played with him in club soccer, so I've seen him pull out some saves. So I think I'd have to put him in goals because I've seen him on a daily basis what things he could do. Usually that's what I would say Lars Hirschfeld would be in goals. Center backs, Matteo Ferrari. I know if you hear Montreal, they always talk Nesta, but he was at the end of his career, and Matteo Ferrari dominated in 2012. He was easily, even though I got player of the year, was easily on par with me and one of the better players on our team and one of the better defenders in the MLS at the time. So having played with, I would say Matteo Ferrari. Right back, good one, but I like Asun Camara. He was an offensive midfielder. He was a midfielder, played right back. He knew how to go up. He had tremendous qualities, and he had an instinct to do stuff in the box that others didn't do as a right back. Left back, I got to go with Ambroise Yongo. I'm going with a lot of Impact guys, but Ambroise Yongo, Cameroon international, won the African Cup, Nation Cup. He could go up and down that left side. I know we always talked about Nacho because he didn't really give the ball to Ambroise that often, but Ambroise was very good at the back. Then after that, Justin Mapp, right wing. Yeah, that guy's just silky smooth. That guy, one-on-one, I haven't seen somebody really be able to stop him. He's fast, but he's just really shifty. And I had just learned lately that he grew up around Trinidadians, so it kind of understood his swag now a little bit more.
There you go.
Got taught by in the Caribbean sense. Up front striker, that's a tough one because I played with Marco Di Vaio, and it was fantastic playing with him because his movement off the ball is. Even though I played with Drogba, but it's just the understanding with Di Vaio was different. It's the type of player, you just put the ball and those movements you want. Drogba likes to play with you, but Di Vaio was kind of like pure number 9. It's a debate between him and Ali Djerba because I think people don't really give that much credit to Ali Djerba, but he was a goal scorer. Like if you look at his stats, it's 16 goals and 30 caps. Mm-hmm. Everybody else has 18, 19, and 50 or 60. He has 16 goals and 30 caps. Except for maybe Jonathan David now, and that's probably going to beat that goal ratio. But he could finish. He knew the game, and you can link up with him. So difficult there to put. I don't know if I put. Probably have to go with Di Vaio because it's just a proven legend. But I put Djerba on my subs bench. That's for sure. On the left, good question. Because it's between Dwayne and Nacho Piatti, So it's Nacho Piatti. Nacho Piatti is something else. Something else. Even Josh Simpson. People don't talk. We didn't see Josh we saw what he could do, but we didn't see on a long extent of what he could do because he could bring the ball A to Z easily. Mm-hmm. He was so fast and shifty and creative. Unfortunately, he got injured. So it's between Dwayne and Nacho, and I don't want to be biased to guys that play for the Impact.
That's so it's tough a little bit now.
Yeah, it's tough because Nacho is fantastic, but Dwayne, he was one of those rare Canadians that I knew we could play bad, but Dwayne could pull off something and score. I will always remember a game in Guatemala. He was on the left wing, close to the byline. Normally you cross, and he curled the ball past the goalkeeper. I think he put it on his Instagram, if I'm correct. But Dwayne was like one of those players, like, wait, like he's one of those first players I saw, like instinct. Like, and if you see Dwayne's highlight, there's no tap-ins. They're all like wonder goals, shots from outside the box, curlers, volley where you shouldn't volley. So I would say just Dwayne, because just pure instinct. It's just pure, and Canadian also, just pure baller at that time. And then who am I missing? One center back, if I'm correct.
Yep, one center back.
Yes, that's correct.
Oof, one center back. That I played with guys who Europe. I'm trying to think. No, it's either between Laurent Simon. Because Laurent is
TFC.
Laurent he's got the capacity to passing range. Anticipate 2015, he got Defender of the Year. And I knew when I was playing in the midfield by the lines, he will find me. He's got the right, left foot. It's like that Belgium soccer school learning.
That's right.
Technically sound. So I probably have to put Laurent in there as a center back with Matteo Ferrari. I always told him when he played I told Matteo Ferrari when Laurent arrived, because Matteo retired in 2014, he should have played one more year. We probably would have had a fantastic defense. So if I'm missing somebody, then two guys on the bench, because I put Ali Dribba there. Probably put Josh Simpson. That's for sure. So that's two. And then a third one. I'm thinking, I got to put Nacho Piatti. I didn't put him on the field, but I got to put him on my bench. So let's say if those guys come in, that's for sure. If I replace Divayo and Dwayne with Nacho and Josh and Ali,
when we hear these teams, Patrice, it from all these players and these webinars, it makes you miss football. It's for us. This is not necessarily, I think, a segment more for the kids. This is a little bit more nostalgia now for our generation.
Because you guys grew up with us, watching us play. So for the kids now, it's messy and all that stuff. So when you talk about our names, they're like, he probably was good. I saw him play a little bit when he was at the end of his career. And you saw us play at the Gold Cup or some great moments at the Impact or TFC, and so of course when we talk with Thierry also, sometimes he talks about his moments at Arsenal and Barcelona. I'm like, it's like I watched those games, man.
I thank you for joining us here on what's been a very open and detailed conversation. I have no doubt that your career is going to continue to evolve, and I'm sure the next time we will speak, it'll probably be in a head coaching role, as just getting a little bit of a snippet of you as an individual. Just looks like you just have so much left to give to the game, and so much love for the game, and I think those are key components towards it. And just taking myself back to that game, unfortunately for Montreal that lost at Toronto FC. I was in the stands that day, and I just remember being so thankful, not necessarily the result, but just being in an environment that emulated, what I grew up yearning for on TV, and seeing, big games in Europe, and just seeing, fans go crazy and just the stadium boiling over. And I remember, just being at that point, and I remember it started raining when it was going into overtime, and I was just like,
that's true.
This is just unbelievable. They made some makeshift stands in Toronto, and the stands, I remember, they were like very shaky, and like people started looking around like, this is this safe? And I was just like, no, this is football. This is exactly what we've yearned for to get for many years. So I thank you for your contributions to the game. I thank you, for being a warrior for our country, and now wish you the best in your season with Montreal. I think regardless of the fact of, rivalries, we talk about Toronto FC and Vancouver and things of that nature, we always look out for each other. If Montreal is playing, it's, playing against Columbus or something, there's no question, even though we say we're rivals, it's not as sophisticated as in Europe, where we say, you know, I would never want Montreal to succeed in anything. I think it's not there yet, and you know, we need you guys.
It's getting there. Don't worry. I know some TFC fans. Hey, when you guys won, wasn't shy to say it. I didn't want you guys to win in 2016. I was happy when you didn't win. At least I could go to sleep a little bit better knowing if I didn't win, they didn't win either. But like you said, that series was like, no, this is not England. This is not Brazil. This is actually happening on Canadian soil, Toronto and Montreal.
Sure.
So it was great to have lived it. Thanks for having me. It was fantastic. It's always now it's nice because you can just chat a bit more. When you're a player, you gotta be a little bit more politically correct. But yeah, always nice. Keep it up, because at the end of the day, the game only lives to the people who really want to push it, which is not just us who played it and who are in it. It's people like you who are coaching because you love the game. You could have just stayed at home and said, I'm going to watch games. No, you decided that you're going to coach and share your knowledge and share your love for the game. So to all the kids who are listening or paying attention, that is passion. It's not just playing the game. It's teaching it, because the game is a teacher first and foremost.
Thanks, Patrice. On behalf of all of us, we wish you a safe return to play, and all the best with Montreal Impact in this upcoming season. Do too well, but not better than obviously Toronto.
Thank you, Patrice.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
All the best.